So let's talk about the Kievan Rus, or the Keevan Rus. So you had Kiev, right? Key and Shechek and Koriv and Libid. You had these three brothers and a sister which had founded Kiev, but then Russia is going to rape the shit out of those Eastern Slavs. They were the Polans. So you had the Swedish Vikings. When they took over, the Kievan Rus is going to begin in 882, okay? So 882 years after Jesus Christ was born, right? 882. That's when Russia first raped the Ukraine. So Kiev had begun before then, at least probably 100, if not 300,000 years ago. Russia is going to rape and pillage and steal Ukraine in 882. Now, 882, this is before Mila Kunis. This is before Joseph Conrad, before Daniel Greenberg, after Gilgamesh, after Confucius, after Jesus fucking Christ. Where Muhammad's around 882, was he 500? Where's Muhammad? Well, let's check that out right now. What years did Muhammad live? But we're going to talk about Igor. Igor is going to get killed by the Drevlians. So Muhammad, he was alive from 570 to 632. So this is after Muhammad had lived and died. At least 200 to 300 years later. So Igor of Novgorod, this is the Russians, this is the Kievan Rus are saying this is the mother, right? The Kievan Rus are the mother of the Russian people. Well, you're going to have Oleg, you're going to have Rurik. Rurik, they call this entire dynasty the Rurik dynasty. So Rurik is the number one guy. So you had Rurik, and then you're going to have Oleg, and then you're going to have Igor. And Igor, I'm going with Igor on this. Igor is going to get ripped in half by the Drevlians. So the Drevlians in 945 AD. So 882 is when they conquered Kiev. And so the Kievan Rus is going for 882 until 945, right? So what, 60-something, 70-something years? And then Igor goes to get some taxes from the Drevlians. And guess what happens to them? They tie one foot up onto a birch tree, and they tie another foot up to a birch. They take two birch trees, and they bend them down, and then they tie his legs to both of them, and then cut them loose, therefore ripping Igor in half. So Igor of Novgorod, yeah, the fucking native Ukrainians did not like to be conquered. They did not want this fucking piece of shit, the Novgorod motherfucking piece of shit. The Drevlians, am I saying the Drevlians are native Ukrainians? Possibly. I mean, fuck, the Drevlians killed the shit out of Igor, and I'm sure the other ones that were being oppressed didn't take kindly to his oppression. So let's see here. Igor of Novgorod. So Igor's the baby, Igor's the son. So Rurik, this whole dynasty goes on for like 700 years. So the Rurik dynasty, he's the one that established Russia in Ladoga. The fortress is built in Ladoga and Novgorod. That's where Russia begins, is in Novgorod, or Ladoga, if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty. But those cities are closer to St. Petersburg and Moscow today than they are to, Kiev. So anyways, it's a hike. It's a hike from Novgorod to Kiev. So you got the Kievan Rus, I guess, in the south, and the Novgorod Rus up north. But you got the Slavs too, right? And you got the Drevlians. Where the hell are they up? Where the hell are they at? Then you got Dostoyevsky, Galifianakis, Sheshuan by Vishivanka. You got Dostoyevsky, Galifianakis, Vishivanka, Sheshuan. If you're trying to be, cosmopolitan, that's what I love about you, America. Your knowledge about the world. America, your knowledge about your worldly cosmopolitanism. That's what I love about you, America. Igor of Novgorod, he's a prince of Novgorod, but he's going to be the king, right? Because motherfucker, he's going to die, right? At 945, so that means, oh shit, so that means you had Rurik die, Oleg is going to die, right? So you had Rurik die, Oleg die, and now that Oleg had died, Igor is now the king, right? But he got ripped up in two. So yeah, I guess the local people, they didn't take kindly to these Spanish Viking motherfuckers, Russian or not. Igor, I don't know if you're a Russian or not, or a Spanish Viking, or what the fuck you want to call yourself, but I'm gonna rip you in half, you pile of shit. And why? Well, he taxed them twice in 1 month, and I get that. Fuck taxes, okay? You tax me once a year, 2 times in 1 month. Get the fuck out of here, Igor. Igor, go back to Novgorod, motherfucker. Motherfucker's gonna come to the Drevlian. You're gonna come to the Drevlian. You're gonna come to the village of the Drevlians and tax us 2 times in 1 goddamn month. Fuck you. Here's some birch tree ripping. Here's a little drawing and quartering. We're gonna kind of just really fuck your whole fucking world up here, Buckaroony. 2 times in 1 month. What a dick, Igor of Novgorod. I mean, he probably did some worse shit in his life, but he pushed the Drevlians too far on that day. So this is Igor of Novgorod. They're all from the Novgorod motherfuckers. That's the Muscovites. So the Muscovites, they tried to, they pillaged and conquered motherfucking Kiev for a bit. Kiev is on the Dnieper, right, the Dnieper River. The Dnieper River goes right through the middle of Kiev, or Kiev. Kiev, one syllable. Kiev is one syllable, right? Kiev is how you fucking say the Russian version. And I've heard it say Kriv. I don't like Kriv. I'm going with Kiev. Just one syllable, like Kiev. Key with a V. Kiev. So, the Dnieper River. So Kiev is right there on the Dnieper River, right there between the Baltic and the Scandinavian Vikings, the Germans, the Dutch. Yeah, the Kiev is in a better place between the Byzantine Empire and the Hanseatic League. So, yeah, that's what happens to Igor. He got ripped in half. Novgorod is right above Lake Ilmen. You got Novgorod right above Lake Ilmen. The fortress, the Ladoga Fortress, is right there on the coast of Lake Ladoga. To go from Novgorod to Kiev, you got to go through Belarus, right? It's like going from fucking Colorado to California. You got to go through Nevada. Novgorod is Northern Europe. Kiev is Southern Europe. They do not have the same histories. They don't have the same culture. Similar. I'm sure they got similar shit going on, but they don't have the same. It's not the same. The Drevlians, on the other hand, I'm quoting here, existed in bestial fashion and lived like cattle. They killed one another, ate every impure thing, and there was no marriage between them, but instead they seized upon maidens by capture. The Radimichians, the Viaticians, and the Severians had the same customs. The Radimichians and the Viaticians and the Severians. These are all native tribes in this fucking area at the time. These are probably Ukrainians, right? The Drevlians, the Radimichians, the Viaticians, and the Severians. These are all Ukrainians. They lived in the forest like any wild beast and ate every unclean thing. They spoke obscenely before their fathers and their daughters-in-law. There were no marriages among them, but simply festivals among the villages. When the people gathered together for games, for dancing, and for all other devilish amusements, and the men on these occasions carried off wives for themselves, and each took any woman with whom he had arrived at an understanding. So they had a hookup culture. In fact, they even had 2 or 3 wives apiece, like the Mormons in Utah. Igor was killed while collecting tribute from the Drevlians in 945. The Byzantine historian and chronicler Leo the Deacon, born 950, describes how Igor met his death. They had bent down 2 birch trees to the prince's feet and tied them to his legs. They then let the trees straighten again, thus tearing the prince's body apart, so spreading his legs until his body was torn apart in half, straight from his dick up to his head. Fucking insane ending, right? Ripped his asshole in half, ripped the whole thing. God damn, that had been a fucking gruesome, bloody, insane fucking, probably, hopefully he didn't suffer too fucking long being ripped in half like that. Was it take like 30 seconds being without a head, just blanking? You can't say nothing, but you can blink. Maybe you can blink out of Morse code. What a fucked up ending. Drevlians did not take kindly to being taxed 2 times in the same month. So, you're going to have Olga is actually going to redeem her husband. Olga's a beast. Olga is a badass. And they're going to reform their system of taxation. Clearly, their system of taxation is it's not working. The Drevlians did not. It's like, why do we have to pay you money, motherfucker? We just fucking. I mean, that's really what the Ukrainians could have saved themselves if they would have just told Stalin and the communists, to fuck the fuck off. You want to come in here and starve the shit out of us with a hole in the door? Yeah, that's what the Ukrainians should have done when Lenin and, the communists came into Ukraine and starved the fucking shit out of them. Emperor Michael III, he was killed. He's a Byzantine emperor at the time. Both of his hands were chopped off and then he's stabbed in the heart. So that's fucking weird. The person that killed Emperor Michael III chops off both of his hands. And we'll chop this hand off. Maybe he reaches for the gun. Chop, nope. Then he reaches for this gun, nope. And then a stab in the heart. Is that what happened? That's almost like Nat Turner. Oleg, he just straight up killed Ass Cold and Dur. Again, and I don't know who Ass Cold and Dur were. Some people say it was like Al Dur. There's some guy named Al Dur, which sounds Muslim or Arabic to me. So that means Al Dur could have been somebody else. Ass Cold Dur, Al Dur. I don't know. So it could be one person. It could be 2 people. It could be the Norse. It could be Oleg killed another Spanish Viking chief, or Oleg killed, some Slav or some Eastern Slav or some Drevlian or the Polans, right? That's who the Kiev were, Polans to begin with. They were the Polans, which sounds very similar to Poland. So Igor's going to ripped in two. Igor's going to get ripped in two by the Drevlians. So that's, I'm just comparing and contrasting. All these people are kind of, Oleg, he killed the fucking shit out of Ass Cold and Dur, and then Igor is going to get the Drevlian's going to kill the shit out of him. And I forget who killed Emperor Michael III. I want to say maybe the Council of Constantinople. It's the Byzantine Empire, though. So you had Emperor Michael III. No, that was Basilius. Yeah, Emperor Michael III. That's fucking a fascinating goddamn history. Because essentially he just elevated his brother-in-law until his brother-in-law fucking chopped his head off. It's like, wait a second. I gave you money. I gave you power. I gave you riches. Yeah, so really I'm the king, right? I mean, you're not the king. I'm the king. What? What? You owe me. Probably, if I had a conscience, but I'm going to chop off your head. Now I don't owe you shit. Now I run everything around here. And then somebody got killed by a bee sting. Ethelwulf. I want to say Ethelwulf got killed by a bee sting. How did Ethelwulf die? Ethelwulf, of course, being the famous king of Wessex from 839 to 858. His father, King Ecbert, defeated King Bornwulf of Mercia, ending a long Mercian dominance over the Anglo-Saxon England south of the Humber. But I don't have to tell you that, America. I don't have to tell you that. Igor's the son of Rurik the Great, the father of the Rus, right? The Rutsi. So Rurik the Great, the father of the Rutsi. Some say Igor had reigned for 33 years. Others say for merely 4 years, 941 to 945. Konstantin Zuckerman says 4 years. Indeed, none of Igor's activities were recorded in the chronicle as dated before 941. I mean, with that ripping, it's kind of hard to stand by Igor with anything. He did get ripped in half by 2 birch trees. Yeah. Oof. Did you know him? I kind of, it was just more of an association, more of an associate. Not really a friendship. More of a tenuous grasp, a very tenuous connection. So let's go with Aethelwulf, Death and Secession. Said he died on January 13th, 858. And it doesn't say why. But I think beasting, right? Yeah. That's what the TV show says. Some of that shit in the Vikings is good history. The other shit in the Vikings TV show is not good history. 862. Rurik the Varangian. The Varangians were mostly Swedish Vikings. They are going to, take over Ladoga and Novgorod. So I don't know who the original inhabitants of those cities, but that's the father of the Russians right there. Maybe some came from Norway or Denmark, but most of the Varangian Vikings are Swedish Vikings. So Rurik is a Swedish Viking, Oleg is a Swedish Viking, and Igor is a Swedish Viking. 862 is established as the date of when the Russian state begins. So the Varangians established the Russian state in Novgorod in Staraya Ladoga. So they establish, Russia gets established in Ladoga, Russia gets established in Novgorod. And then, they try to include Kiev because they want to take over all. Remember, hey, Kiev, remember Ukraine? Remember way back when I told you that joke and it was awesome? Yeah? Well, now I get to own you and rape you and take your riches and your wealth and do whatever the hell I want with you, you piece of shit. That's not right. That's not right. So the Russian state actually got established in 1862, and they're going to say the Kievan Rus is because when Prince Oleg of Novgorod takes Kiev, right, kills fucking Askhold Dur, that happened in 882. That happens 20 years later. So that means Russia gets established 20 years before the Kievan Rus was established. So you got the Kievan Rus and you got the Novgorod Rus. And the Novgorod Rus are the St. Petersburg Rus and the fucking Moscovite Rus, Moscow Rus, the Russians today. And then not only do you have the Scythians, you have the Huns, the Goths, Mongolians, the Greeks, Romans. You had a lot of people in goddamn Ukraine. So when Prince Oleg of Novgorod seized Kiev, then the house of, the fortress at Novgorod and the fortress at Kiev, they ruled this one, northern and southern kingdom of the Eastern Slavs. So you shouldn't call that the Russian, the Kievan Rus. You should say that's the Kievan Slavs. That would make more sense. The Kievan Slavs are being run by the Kievan Rus. But eventually the Slavs, overthrow the Rus, and then they have to overthrow the Mongolians, and then they have to overthrow the Polish Lithuanians, and then they have to overthrow the Russians. Or they still have to overthrow the Russians. 882, Oleg the Seer killed Askhold and Dur. Oleg the Seer. Okay. Apparently, the Askhold and Dur, the earliest known Norse rulers of Kiev, the primary chronicle relates that Askhold and Dur were sanctioned by Rurik to go to Constantinople. So, Askhold and Dur are the Norse. They were sent to go to Constantinople, Norse known as Miklagard, and in Slavic, Zargrad. Zargrad is Constantinople. When traveling in the Dnieper, they settled in Kiev, seizing power over the Polans. Again, we're looking at the Polans. So Oleg, the Polans are the original Kiev, the brothers, the three brothers and the sister were Polans. They're Eastern Slavs. So we're seeing the Slavs get conquered by these Spanish Vikings. So there's, both Slavic culture and Norse culture in Ukraine. But I side with the oppressed, and it seems to me that they would be the native Ukrainians are the original Ukrainians. So this is what the fucking Spanish Vikings are doing to the original Ukrainians. They seized Kiev. The Polans are the original Ukrainians. The Polands had been paying tribute to the Khazars, Khazars. The Chronicle also states that they were killed by Oleg the Seer in 882. So 882, that's the beginning of the Kievan Rus, the Great Kievan Rus, when Oleg, the Norse fucking Spanish Viking piece of shit, came and killed Askold and Dur. So you had some Norse Viking, some Norse Spanish Viking, killed some other Norse Spanish Viking who had conquered Kiev prior, but they didn't say the kingdom is one. Oleg, Rurik had just died. So Igor's going to become king, but he's only a toddler, so Oleg is king now. When Oleg is king, he's going to fucking take over goddamn Kiev, and nobody's going to fucking say shit to him. This is Russia raping the shit out of Ukraine. In 882, Russia raped Ukraine. That is not... The Muscovites are, the northern Rus are trying to rape out the, southern Rus, or the Slavs, or the Drevlians, or the Scythians, whoever the hell you want to call the native Ukrainians. How about God's people? So God's people are living in Ukraine, and then you had the Spanish Vikings, Oleg, conquer them, rape them, steal their shit, and then that's the beginning of Russia. And that's the beginning of Russia. According to the primary chronicle, Prince Oleg King Oleg had tricked and killed Askold and Dur with an elaborate scheme. Vasily Tatishev, Boris Rybakov, and some other Russian and Ukrainian historians interpreted the 882 coup d'etat in Kiev as the reaction of the pagan Varangians to Askold's baptism. Wow. So Askold and Dur had got baptized. Askold and Dur went ahead and got respect for the Spanish Vikings, confronted Constantinople. They were running Kiev. They were doing good. But I guess that's why Oleg, fucking King Oleg, wanted Kiev, because it's like, well, this Askold and Dur, we send those asshole Askolds and Dur down there, and they're kicking ass and taking names. And so just massive jealousy, just massive fucking jealousy. You know what? If I just go down there, nobody would even see it coming. Right? Because, they're Spanish Vikings. We're Spanish Vikings. I go there, and they would probably welcome us as the brothers that we are. Hey, brother. Yeah, that's great. So fucking King Oleg is a brother killer. He's a piece of shit that doesn't... He didn't want to get democracy. He didn't want to get the people to vote for him. They probably would have voted for Askold and Dur. So he didn't want to do all that. No. It was an elaborate scheme. He said something like, he invited them, and here's the sun, and they have, and then the fucking troops jumped out of the fucking thing, like how the Bolsheviks killed the Romanovs. Just come on down to the basement. Now we're just going to have some tea and crumb cake. We're going to have some tea and some crumb cake. So Askold, not only did Askold and Dur, conquer Kiev, or, was administrating Kiev, they confronted Constantinople, but they also had adopted Christianity. So, the civilizing force of Christianity, Askold and Dur had already adopted it. You're going to have Vladimir the First that's going to adopt Christianity in 900 something. So 100 years later, basically, fucking King Oleg stopped the Christianity of Kiev way beforehand, way before Vladimir, whoever did. Tatishev went so far as to style Askold and Dur as the first Russian martyrs. Arab historian al-Masudi, according to him, King al-Dur, or Dayr, D-A-Y-R, was the first among the kings of the Slavs, the Saqualiba. A Kievan legend identifies Askold's burial mound with Uhorska Hill, where Olga of Kiev later built two churches devoted to St. Nicholas and St. Irene. Today, this place is on the steep bank of the Dnieper, is marked by a monument called Askold's Grave. 988, the state adopted Christianity from the Byzantine Empire. 988. Yeah, thanks a lot, Oleg, King Oleg. Motherfucking Askold and Dur had, Kiev was already Christianized in 882, and then it took another 100 years, you pile of shit. So, what the fuck? And then the Kievan Rus came in, and, they were making gains, but the Kievan Rus set them back. Keevan Roos, go back to the goddamn Spanish, the Viking Sweden, motherfucker. Go back to Viking Sweden. Go back to Sweden where you came from, you fucking pieces of shit. So when Kiev adopted Christianity, when Vladimir from the Byzantine in 988, that begun the synthesis of Byzantine and Slavic cultures that defined Russian culture for the next millennium. First documented in 1147. 1147, Moscow. The first time that we find anything where Moscow is documented is 1147. So Moscow isn't even going to get established. Kiev was established at least, 700? And then motherfucking 400 years later, Moscow, hundreds of years later, Moscow is going to be mentioned. So, probably were established if they're mentioned. They're going to grow to become a prosperous and powerful city that served as the capital of the Grand Duchy that bears its name. When the Grand Duchy of Moscow evolved into the Tsardom of Russia, Moscow still remained as the political and economic center for most of the Tsardom's history. When the Tsardom was reformed into the Russian Empire, the capital was moved from Moscow to St. Petersburg, diminishing the influence of the city. The capital was then moved back to Moscow following the October Revolution, and the city was brought back as the political center. So that's Lenin and the Bolsheviks. So Moscow was the political center, then it wasn't for a minute, and then it came back again after the October Revolution, which is 1917. The Russian SFSR, Soviet Union, in the aftermath of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Moscow remains as the capital city of the contemporary and newly established Russian Federation. So Moscow, is documented in 1147, and then 1240, the Kievan Rus is going to get smashed. So the Muscovites always say, hey, Ukraine, remember when we used to be Russians and everything was that's their golden years. The Kievan Rus remember those 500 years? Those were the golden years, weren't they? Or 888 to 1240, that's not 500 years. That's fucking barely 300 years, 350 years. Remember those golden years? There's 300 golden years of the Kievan Rus. When the Muscovites fucking motherfucking, Spanish Vikings came and killed their own to conquer the thing and then declared the thing. So what? I guess they killed their own, and then because he was the king of the Novgorod Rus, then he became king of the Kievan Rus too, and then that combined the two for 350 years. Something like that. And it's the Rus. They were, ruling over the Slavs, over the Polans. So, and the Drevlians. And the Drevlians didn't take kindly to 1240, the Kievan Rus is going to get smashed. They're going to get disintegrated as a state because of the Mongolian invasion of 1237 to 1240, along with the resulting deaths of a significant number of the population. So, yeah, the Kievan Rus, they're a bunch of bitch-ass pussies. They could fucking, be a bunch of dicks to a bunch of Slavs, a bunch of, loving and trusting Slavs. But when it comes to the Mongols, they weren't shit. They let the Mongol, fuck. So Ukrainians are really Mongolians, are they not? I mean, the Mongolians. The Mongolians were the conquerors. The Kievan Rus were conquerors. So the Mongolians were just conquerors that conquered the conquerors. So therefore, they're on top. And the Slavs, I guess, are just still the Slavs, right? They need a Slavic king. Who was the first Slavic king? They said, Askold and Dur. King Aldur was the first among the kings of the Saqualiba. Let's find out what the Saqualiba are, and then, sing a little song, do a little dance. Saqualiba. It's a term used in medieval Arabic sources to refer to Slavs and other peoples of Central, Southern, and Eastern Europe, or in a broad sense to European slaves. The term originates from the Middle Greek, Slavos, Skalavinos, Slav, which in Hispano-Arabic came to designate first Slavic slaves, and then similarly to the semantic development of the term in other Western European languages, foreign slaves in general. The word was often used to refer specifically to Slavic slaves, but it could also refer more broadly to Europeans traded by the Arab traders. Saqualiba. You got any of them Saqualibas? They're major routes of trading of Slavic slaves in the Arab world through Central Asia, the Mongols, the Tartars, the Khazars, etc. For the East Slavs through the Balkans, for the South Slavs through Central and Western Europe, for the West Slavs and to Al-Andalus. The Volga trade route and other European routes, according to Ibrahim ibn Jacob, were sentenced 10th century were serviced by Radhanite Jewish merchants. Compare Crimean Nogagi raids into East Slavic lands. Theophanes mentions Okay, so what's my point? The Saqualiba, when you say the name of the dead to the earth, they're still alive. So Saqualiba, Saqualibid, Saqualibid. You had Valencia, you had Denia, you had Tortosa, you had Almeria. You're going to tell me that what? There wasn't no Valencia? You're going to tell me there wasn't no Denia? And then who did they say was the first? That Aldir? Who's that Aldir? That Aldair? Is the Aldair here? No. The first of the Slavs, the first king of the Slavs isn't even fucking... Is the Saqualiba even the Slavs? Aethelwulf, is he even the king of the Wessex? Is he even the king of the Wessex? The Khazars, are they even the semi-nomadic Turkic people? The semi-nomadic Turkic people in the late 6th century AD established a major commercial empire covering the southeastern section of modern European Russia, southern Ukraine, Crimea, and Kazakhstan. Is that? So it's actually the Khazars. Ukraine is the Khazars. Kazakhstan should invade Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to defend itself, and anybody who wants to defend Ukraine has a right to defend anybody who has, who's being oppressed. So Ukraine has a right to defend themselves, and the rest of the world has a right to defend the Ukraine. Fuck Putin and the Russians. Fucking, except for the anti-war Russians. The Russians that are going to jail, they're facing 15 years in fucking prison to stand up against this nonsense. Those are the only Russians I give a fuck about. The rest of the Russians who just like putting their head in the sand and pretending nothing ain't happened. We need to turn those Russians into Ukrainians.